COG Board of Directors. And we'll go ahead and start by doing the Pledge of Allegiance for all those who can stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So on today's agenda, and as a reminder, our meetings audio and video are live streamed on the COG website. And for those who've had the opportunity to grab lunch, lunch is again catered by the Capitol Lounge Cafe, which is a new restaurant located on the first floor of this building. We will hope that all of you will continue to support them by stopping by on or after COG meetings. And I'm also excited to talk about our annual leadership retreat, which is scheduled July 25th and 26th of this year. Please make sure that you have these 2 days on your calendar, and we'd love to have you join us in Cambridge, Maryland, a lovely, lovely spot. Staff will be sending out a registration link for the retreat to all board members after today's meeting. This is a unique opportunity for us to connect with our counterparts throughout the region and to discuss the priorities of COG and issues going forward over the course of the coming year. So next, we have agenda item number 3, amendments to the agenda. In front of you is an updated agenda that was emailed to each of the board members due to the hearings in the House. Unfortunately, a member of the congressional delegation was not able to join us here today. Therefore, we've updated the agenda and added a roundtable discussion on the state of the region, which was something we had previously scheduled on the last meeting agenda, but we didn't have enough time, so we'll be able to do that here today. So with that, are there any additional amendments to today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4. So our executive director's report, I would love to turn it over now to our executive director, Clark Mercer, to give his report.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and welcome everyone. Lots of good stuff to report from the last month. First and foremost, I'm sitting next to COG's new general counsel, Matt Weinstein, with McGuire Woods. Sharon Pandak earned a very well-deserved retirement for COG, went through a competitive process, and Matt and McGuire Woods were selected. A couple highlights. One, it's great having a firm where they have lots of different lawyers who handle different types of law. So if Matt needs to hand us off to someone within the firm that has a particular type of expertise, we are able to tap into that. But Matt has a lot of experience with the type of work that we do, doing a lot of zoning and housing work in Arlington County, having represented water authorities, including Loudoun Water and Alex Renew, and also serves as counsel to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. So some good background in local government. At next month's meeting, we will have several other new faces. We will have a handful of new department directors and staff to introduce to you, but wanted to make sure that you got introduced to Matt today. On April 10th, we hosted the Capitol Caucus. Many of you attended. Thank you. That was the first time that the entirety of the delegations, senators and delegates from our footprint in Maryland and Virginia, along with DC City Council, were invited to attend an event together. Obviously through NCSL and other ad hoc boards or commissions, folks have met over the years, but that group has not come together before. So thank you, Delegate Sickles, for pulling together many of your colleagues, and Senator Feldman for Maryland doing the same. The idea is to have that be an annual event, probably more of a legislative preview to talk about the issues that the legislatures will be facing before they go into session. It was a little bit of a legislative wrap up this year. On April 29th, we had a joint public safety and security summit with Metro. Half-day event, pulling together police chiefs, fire chiefs, the 911 directors, talking about all of the different work we do, coordinating with Metro and the region on public safety, And U.S. Senator Mark Warner gave the keynote address at that summit. From April 15th through the 17th, we partnered with the National Capital Region and many of our other partners for a fire health and safety seminar, where we had about 200 participants on topics including lessons learned related to the lithium-ion battery fires, the impacts of cancer to the firefighting community, and leveraging data to inform a safer emergency response. So our law enforcement team was busy in April. On the 22nd, they also hosted a pilot session on alerting law enforcement to the tactics of extremists. Training was delivered to the Center for Naval Analyses. And on May 3rd, our chair attended and spoke at the 33rd Annual Wreath Laying Ceremony and Honor Guard Competition in honor of corrections officers who have fallen in the line of duty. Last week on May 6th, we host the Chief Administrative Officers Monthly. Last week, they got out on the Potomac River with our partners at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to kind of see firsthand wastewater runoff issues, bay restoration efforts, combined sewer overflows, all of the things we put a lot of money into to make sure we have clean waterways. And on April 24th in this room, we hosted 26 economic development directors. So each of your leads on economic development was here to kind of level set with what's going on in the region, talk about greater coordination, regional branding, and regional efforts to attract and retain businesses. That's the first time we've pulled that group together. And there's certainly interest in doing that again. And we talked about, which we did last year's retreat, interest in a comprehensive economic development strategy, RSEDs, for the region. And I think next month we'll be able to introduce you to the new department director who will lead that work. And lastly, I continue to get out to members and kind of give the COG 101 update. Last night I was in Frederick County, met with the executive Fitzwater, thank you, and then presented to the council. Was also at Prince William County, so thank you, Chair Jefferson, for having me, and look forward to being in your jurisdiction soon. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mercer. We'll move to agenda item number 5, which is the approval of the minutes from our meeting on April 9th, 2025. And I will ask, is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the April 9th board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. I'll accept the motion from Vice Chair Allen, and I'll accept the second from, who was the second on that side? Okay. Mayor Jordan. So thank you. All those who are in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Any nays? Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Next is on the quorum. Am I able to proceed? Okay. We'll move, continuing to agenda item number 6 on the consent agenda. We have one resolution on the consent agenda today regarding COG authorizing to procure and enter into a contract to purchase vendor support services to conduct an after-action report on the American Airlines Flight 5342 aviation incident. This can be found on page 18 of the board package. With that, I move approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. That's Mr. Snyder. Thank you. All of those who are in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Next, we have on agenda item number 7, an opportunity to hear on our foster care program and our 2025 recognition. And we just want to acknowledge those great foster parents of the year. We will hear from our COG Human Services Planner, Jasmine Burrows, on the work of the Foster Care Advisory Committee, and then we'll watch a short video on the 2025 awardees. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Burrows.
Thank you so much, and definitely thank the board for giving me time to speak about our small but pretty wonderful committee today. and view the 2025 Foster Parent of the Year video. The Foster Care Advisory Committee is fairly a small committee. Our members mostly include recruiters, managers, and trainers across DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. Our goal is to use regional approaches to increase recruitment and retention in the foster care system. One of the best and most beneficial practices I believe we use is recruitment sharing. That's where our members share the materials that they use for recruitment efforts, such as Fairfax recently shared a What's Your Story form, sharing foster parents' story of becoming a foster parent and that process to increase our retention and recruitment efforts. Recently, the main topics the committee has discussed are mass deportation policies, increase of kinship care, and lived experiences among youth who have aged out of care. Our mass deportation concerns includes an increased amount of children in care, the number of accepted placements of children in care, and decreased federal funding for undocumented children in care. We're also concerned about the public perception of undocumented children who are in care that can lead to fewer children being adopted or in foster care. We've also talked about increasing kinship care around the area. As you can see, the DMV area is below the natural average for kinship care. We've talked about how do you increase those numbers, better understanding the approval process, more increased home visits, and kinship first, not placement first. The last thing we discussed was lived experiences, youth who have aged out of care through fostering an independence program, and Youth Voices Rising, which is a news outlet that helps youth who age out of care share their experiences. Our most current project is our data collection project. This report will serve as a template on how to improve the region's foster care system, from recruitment efforts to better supporting potential and current resource parents and youth in care, of course. By knowing the demographics, we'll be able to know the practices of recruitment and be innovative and detailed. The last report that was done by COG was in 2016. So the numbers that you see are very, very early numbers. We've only had 4 months of submissions, both full and partial submissions. As you can see, the majority of youth in foster care are ages 16 to 21 and are African-American males. The jurisdictions are not used to reporting these numbers, so that's why we're seeing the partial numbers coming through. Many of our members are counting these numbers themselves by hand or send them to me and I count them by hand. As we look forward to strengthening recruitment and retention efforts, which is critical to increasing our foster care system, it's worth considering our unique roles in the foster care system, whether it's highlighting monthly recruitment sessions or promoting awareness in your district, or just simply knowing your numbers, how many kids are in foster care in your district, what are their ages, how long have they been in foster care. Even the small action can have a big impact on our system. As you know, each year, 10 families from the jurisdiction are recognized by their resource workers for their outstanding efforts as foster parents. In the previous years, families have been very diverse. We've been able to improve this project by discussing updating the title to Resource Parent of the Year instead of Foster Parent of the Year, and to increase our kinship efforts, we're also discussing including kinship families in the next Resource Parents of the Year project. This year, as you may be able to note on the video, we've updated how the video is filmed to avoid language such as separated from family, to include language such as place with family, and the importance of housing older youth. As you can see, the numbers show older youth are the majority. That's it for my presentation, and once again, thank you so much to the board for allowing me to speak a little bit about our Foster Care Advisory Committee.
No, thank you very much for that presentation, and just wanted to see if there are any questions for Mrs. Burrows before we watch the 2025 video. Yes, Mr. Takonis, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that to the surface and showing a little bit your work on this. I'm very concerned about the first point, the mass deportation, the generation of probably dozens or hundreds of children right now. What is the input that the committee has about how the region is responding to that? There are several legal challenges here, different standards about how to handle the temporary protection of these children by different judges across the region. To be honest, I'm in Arlington, Virginia. We found our pace to accommodate in advance parents who are undocumented or are in, at risk of not being able to care for the children. But this has been really a very, very difficult thing. So I would be interested in your take and insight.
Yeah, it's very challenging because not only do we already have a decreased amount of children who have to be placed, with their parents not being able to care for them. And of course, like you said, legal challenges. I know the recent legal challenge is whether the child is deported with the parents or not. What I'm hearing from my members is that there are an added number to be placed, basically. So more children are going into care and not being placed. So they're trying to figure out creative ways to where to place those children. In Arlington, I know that some members have rented out empty buildings to place those children. Some members have a emergency care that resource parents are allowed to have a child for a week at any time of the day. So they're basically hearing creative ways to where to put the children that you were seeing coming in care.
Thank you. What's salient to me is that the federal government, as the driving force of the crackdown on immigration and mass deportation, appears to me not caring less about what happens to real people. Children are absolutely real and most vulnerable people. By the way, also mostly American citizens. And correct me if I'm wrong, but do we have even the slightest response from the federal government to a very real problem that's generated every day on our streets?
Fortunately, all we've seen is a decrease in funding for these children. So unfortunately, that's the only response that we're seeing. Something else I wanted to add is that's where we're seeing kinship care decrease as well. Typically, if a child is displaced from their parent, they will be placed with a cousin or grandparent. But if the majority of the family may have undocumented status, that's where we're seeing kinship increase because the child is less likely to be placed with that family member.
And that doesn't even account for those children who are in mixed households. I mean, mixed in a sense of their legal status or
Exactly.
legal immigration status. Thank you for that. I mean, we talk very often, colleagues here, about cruelty, etc. This is just plain misanthropic. I don't have any other words to describe that. This is an ongoing crisis. It's only going to be bigger. The needs of these children are going to have to be very central in our efforts here to find resources to help, first of all, to help the families that are now at the end, the kinship that at the end, the families that support these children during this extremely difficult times. I think that we should continue paying a lot of attention to that, and I'm really interested the input of my colleagues here in how they manage that in their jurisdiction. We throw some money on that. There's a community fabric that tries to help and organize to provide the legal, pathways for temporary adoption, but we don't know on the long term how we can provide sustainable support, and we are building up these capacities right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karatonis. I appreciate those comments. Delegate Sickles?
Thank you. I wanted to ask if you have discovered any best practices on recruiting foster parents, because we've done a really bad job in Virginia being able to recruit them and keep them. We just started using kinship care a couple years ago because we were opposed to kinship care for many, many years.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for us on how to better recruit parents, foster parents?
Thank you for your question. Going back to what I'm hearing from my members, I would say community outreach has been the #1 thing that we've discussed, having events and really publicizing those events in your jurisdiction is really helpful. Also, I believe it's Arlington that does this. It may be a district in Maryland, but having a partner for potential foster parents who are current foster parents. So as they're learning and thinking about becoming foster parents, they have that support that's already gone through that process.
Okay. And Supervisor Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate all the work that you're doing for us. The question that I had, you made mention of there not being an interest or support for male, foster kids. So in terms of that, I mean, that's historical. What would your suggestions be, or as we support our districts, what would your suggestions be in terms of how we can engage to support your endeavors more?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I would say, first and foremost, I want to say those numbers are very early in our collection.
Okay.
So take those with a grain of salt. We're only 4 months into collecting, but as we understand the demographics in our foster care system, would definitely suggest a more targeted approach in recruitment and retention effords for that large demographic that we're seeing. But like I said, those are very early numbers in our reporting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And then maybe I'll round out the questions and. Oh, okay.
I know I'm down here at the end, Mr. Chair, so
I
maybe,
apologize, Ms. Jackson. I'll let you go then.
thank you. I just, in Prince George's, we're particularly concerned about youth aging out of foster care. And I saw that you referenced a program, I can't remember the name of the program now, but can you just speak a little bit more about that program? Maybe it was on one of your slides, you referenced a program specifically for youth aging out of foster care.
Was it the Fostering Youth Independence program?
Yes.
That program, we actually have Renee Pope come to our committee meeting and speak more about, from Prince George's, to speak more about that program. I believe it entails vouchers, housing vouchers.
I know about the Prince George's program.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was thinking that maybe there was some sort of collaboration among jurisdictions or a program elsewhere that we could build upon.
Not that I'm aware of. The other program I spoke about was a newsletter in California, actually, that allows youth who age out of care to tell their story and for areas that they need help in. That program also does panels that the youth get paid to share their stories as well. I think that's a really good program, but I haven't heard a jurisdictional program for youth aging out of care.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. Sorry I missed you before. Why don't we go ahead and play the video so we can recognize our 2025 Foster Care Parents of the Year.
We didn't expect that we would be doing this 20 years. I mean, we just took the first child and then we took the next child.
And a lot of our friends, they're foster and adoptive parents too. So it's been really amazing to have all these good relationships.
There are emotional highs, and it's a chance to be a loving and a stable influence in a kid's life at a time when they really need love and stability.
They are smart, they are beautiful. We tell them this every morning. You do mean something, and you are somebody. Even though we may not have been your forever home, we are a forever home.
It's a great thing to come home and know someone is there, but also get to hear about their day and see kind of how their face lights up as you see the transition for them as they feel more supported and secure in the home.
We've gotten to know quite a few other resource families, and we have watched other children, they've watched ours. You kind of become like family.
I think it's important for us to do what we can with what we've been given. This is a way we can give back to the community.
I've always wanted to be a parent. It was rewarding. On the most basic level, I got to care for another person. They can become something so much more greater just by you stepping in the gap. It is so worth it.
Even though it's been probably the most difficult thing I think I've ever done in my life, it's also been the most rewarding. We've been very, very blessed to have these memories, these experiences. Whether they stay or go, those memories, those are forever.
Give kids time to show you who they are. Once you keep showing them like, hey, you can trust me, I'm not gonna give up on you, they'll start peeling back their layers. And when you see the true them, you just fall in love with them.
Older children have been through so much, but they are very resilient and they want that loving home, even if it's just for a week. For a week, they knew what it was to be safe, loved, and cared for.
People are like, wow, like you're doing so much for this child. And it's like, no, the child is doing so much for us. It's such a value to our lives. It's been a really amazing experience.
Now, that's a great video. And I appreciate that we can recognize those individuals for what they're doing in support of those young members of our communities. I understand that we're going to do a sort of a private program with them, so we normally would have them here. So we'll do that sometime in June. I volunteered if possible. I'll try to come if my schedule will accommodate that, because I think it's just a great thing for us to be a part of what they're trying to do here. So thank you very much. Our next agenda item is on the Regional Activity Centers map. So we're going to be briefed here today by COG's planning directors on the Technical Advisory Committee's recommended update to the Regional Activity Centers map, which can be found on page 24 of the board package. Presenting the proposed update for the COG Planning Directors Committee, our co-chairs, Randy Barker from the city of Rockville, the COG Principal Regional Planner, Greg Goodwin. We're also joined by Prince William County's Deputy Director of Planning, David McGurkin. So thank you all for joining us here today, and I'll turn the program over to Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, COG staff. Before I get into my presentation, I was really moved by the last presentation. As a former foster child, I really appreciate sincerely what this board does and the support they provide, because somebody believed in me, and I appreciate everything. And you don't realize how much something like that can impact someone. So thank you. I have the privilege to be the Director of Planning and Development Services for the City of Rockville. I've been there since 2018. Before that, I was the Director of Planning and Zoning for Loudoun County. So I've served on the Director's Technical Advisory Committee for over a decade, and I'm honored to be the co-chair of the Technical Advisory Committee this year, along with Tanya Washington, the Director of Planning for Prince William County. And I've served alongside her in our previous roles as within the Montgomery County Planning Department, as well as the Office of Planning for DC. I'm also joined by Dave McGinning, the Deputy Director of Prince William County. Tanya Washington could not be here today for a previous engagement, and so Dave has a significant amount of experience working on COG committees. Also want to recognize previous co-chairs that actually initiated this effort, and that was Rob Lowe with the City of Laurel, and also Paul Stoddard with the City of Falls Church previously. I want to, before I turn it over to Greg Godwin, I want to kind of give you some process as it relates to our committee. We worked hand in hand with the COG staff, Department of Planning and Community Services, and they provided a number of presentations, emails, and worked individually with the planning directors and their staff to do this update. We were really pleased with the incredible response and survey service that we received, and we worked to make some changes to individually as directors working with COG staff, made changes to the map you have before you based on changes in population density and other criteria that this board has approved in previous maps. So with that, I want to let you know that on March 21st, the Planning Directors Technical Advisory Committee unanimously approved this map before you for your approval. And I now want to turn it over to Greg Godwin, but Dave, Greg, and I are here to answer questions after his presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to really thank the COG board for supporting the Activity Center map project over the years. We've had a number of updates over the years, and it's always a pleasure to be able to come back to this committee with our final product. And in terms of professionally speaking, of all the things that we can do here at COG, this project really exemplifies the process of working with our local governments on a project. So incorporating city and county planning into our regional planning, I think this is a good example of how the coordination is successful, and I really do appreciate it. So just to kind of start off with this presentation, COG's regional activity centers are locations that will accommodate future growth and support the region forward vision goals of prosperity, accessibility, livability, and sustainability. Regional activity centers can exist in many forms. Some have included urban centers, priority growth areas, traditional towns, and transit hubs. The Transportation Planning Board first tasked COG staff with identifying regional activity centers in 1998. And as part of that strategy, it was to better coordinate transportation and land use planning in this region. Staff first selected regional activity centers in 1999, and the COG board has approved 3 updates in 2002, 2007, and 2013. Regional activity centers have several functions. For one, they are a valuable indicator of areas in our region that have been planned to support future growth and transit connectivity. Second, COG and TPP staff use them in monitoring the region, such as Region 4 targets, the COG Board's regional housing targets, and in TPV's Visualize 2050 plan. Lastly, they are grant programs that include regional activity centers as part of their selection criteria, including multiple TPP technical assistant grants, the Amazon-financed Housing Affordability Planning Program grants, and the Technical Assistance Panel grants provided by COG and ULI Washington. As this map will show, the first update to the regional activity centers was based on the round 6.2 forecast, and that is the map on the left. The COG board approved 58 activity centers in 2002. The 2007 update, with 59 regional activity centers, was based on the round 7 cooperative forecast. And finally, on the map on the right, the round 8 forecast, the COG board approved 141 activity centers in 2013. So again, this is showing the connection between the cooperative forecasting, the data that is supported by your local governments and is a part of our land use process here at COG. This regional activity center selection has been based on the round 10 cooperative forecast, which was approved by this board back in June of 2023. And it uses the same technical eligibility criteria that was used for the last update in 2013, but with current plans and data. COG staff conducted the technical analysis, and I would like to identify John Ken on the COG staff at this time for providing this assistance for the last 18 months on this project. The Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee approved the selection criteria and guided COG staff throughout their technical work. COG staff met one-on-one with planners at each member jurisdiction to solicit local know-how and feedback and to ensure that the regional activity center selection was in concert with local planning priorities. At its March 2025 committee meeting, the Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee approved the new Round 10 Regional Activity Centers map with 145 centers selected, each represented on the map as an equally sized half-mile circle. The selection criteria approved by the Planning Director's Technical Advisory Committee was based on 6 attributes assessed over 2 scans. The first application of 2 core attributes shown here required that the potential regional activity center must be 1, identified in either the jurisdiction's comprehensive plan or other local land use plan, and 2, must have a person's density for the year 2025 in the round 10 forecast that is above the median person's density for its jurisdiction. The next application of secondary attributes shown here only requires 2 out of 4 criteria met. 1, having a plan that encourages mixed-use development. 2, containing a high-capacity transit station in the year 2050, be it Metro Rail, Light Rail, streetcar, commuter rail, or bus rapid transit. 3, having housing and transportation cost for a typical household in the potential activity center be no higher than 45% of the monthly regional median income. And we measured this attribute using data coming from the Center for Neighborhood Technology, the H&T Affordable Index. And it is my understanding that the basis of their data is based on the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey. And then finally, the secondary criterion is used to have an intersection density in the regional activity center above 55 intersections per square mile. The planning directors, their staff, and their geographic information systems team worked with COG staff to review local plans and use the geographic boundaries of locally adopted plans for regional activity centers. So what this slide shows is the relationship between the local planning and how we built up to create these regional activity centers. While each regional activity center is portrayed as an equally sized circle on the regional map, COG staff strive to make sure that the analysis areas matched local plans. The most straightforward example is demonstrated on this slide, where the planning area for the Wheelie-Reston East plan for Fairfax County can be seen on the map on the left, which is taken from the plan document itself. On the right is the identical analysis geography of the Wheelie-Reston East Regional Activity Center, which was provided to COG staff by Fairfax County staff. The map of the right is taken from a technical memorandum sent to Fairfax County by COG staff, and it further describes the regional activity selection. Similar, the Hyattsville Crossing Regional Activity Center analysis area, shown on the right, is identical to the adopted local plan of the Prince George's Plaza Transit District Development Plan, seen on the left. Since the plan was adopted, the name of the metro station was changed from the Prince George's Plaza to Hyattsville Crossing, but the same community is represented despite the new name. Another way of regional activity centers are defined is when two adjacent planning areas are combined to achieve a regionally significant center that meets the eligibility criteria. And in this instance, the geography of the Upper Georgia Avenue Area Land Development Plan in the District of Columbia has been combined with the former Walter Reed Army Medical Center Small Area Plan, which is to the west of the Georgia Avenue, to create the former Walter Reed Upper Georgia Avenue Corridor Regional Activity Center. You may notice that the area to the right is slightly larger because the Upper Georgia Avenue plan is geographically focused on parcels fronting the avenue. The Regional Activity Center geography was expanded slightly to include all census blocks that intersect the planning area to avoid any splitting up of blocks in our analysis. A third method of identifying an analysis area using jurisdiction plans and data is to utilize multiple data sources from a single planning area that is too large to be appropriate for a regional activity center. We worked with Charles County staff to identify the appropriate maps from the Waldorf sub-area plan, which covers a large selection of Charles County. The central area concept within the plan highlighted the core, but did not define precise boundaries. The county's GIS data hub had future land use and local activity center polygons that enabled us to precisely identify the areas planned to fit the central area concept, resulting in the final Waldorf Regional Activity Center seen on the right. The one-on-one meetings with county staff were particularly helpful in these instances and provided us with the feedback to ensure that our selection met both local planning priorities and the eligibility criteria. And finally, I know that we want to conserve some time for questions. I do want to leave you with some figures based on the 145 selected regional activity centers. The combined area of the 145 regional activity centers is composed of about 216 square miles. And this represents about 6% of the land area of the COG region, which is about 3,500 total square miles. By the year 2050, these regional activity centers will host 238 high-capacity transit stations, 73% of the planned high-capacity transit stations in the region. These centers are forecasted to grow at a faster rate than the region as a whole. In the round 10.0 forecast for our employment in the selected regional activity centers grows by 35% from 2020 to 2050, and that is compared to 24% outside of the centers. And the population in these centers grows by 53% compared to 15% outside the centers. So essentially what we are seeing in the last 12 or 13 years is that our activity centers are becoming more compact and more dense. And in some ways, that is a good thing for our region when we can concentrate growth based on those ideas.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'll say I really appreciate the way that you've helped visualize kind of both the planning and the transportation-related components, and it's making me think about something, and I think Charles will probably appreciate this. As we are beginning the conversation about an economic development district and how we might put that together, to me, this tool seems like it would have some applicability, not saying it's going to be identical, but the elements and the template that you have here could be used to help us in defining the region from that perspective as well. I don't know if that's something that you've given some thought to, but I just can see the logical extension and application into that area as well.
I think you raise a very good point. I think the potential for economic development is really can highlight this product of where these areas that we do want to concentrate additional growth in the future. So I do think that I do agree that from an economic development standpoint, certainly there is a place for this in that process.
No, I think that'll be great. I know we'll have an opportunity to probably discuss that later, but just wanted to posit that. Maybe we should take up the resolution first, and then we can see if there's any questions from members here. So we have a resolution that's been placed in our package. So it's resolution R14-2025 for consideration. Is there a second to that resolution?
Second.
Thank you. Supervisor Bailey, I'll accept that. We have a second. And just in terms of those in favor? Aye. Okay, those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Dave Snyder, before we vote on this, there were some edits that need to be made to the map. So I'm not really sure when you wanted to bring that up.
Before we close it then, let me do this. If you have edits that you'd like to suggest, why don't we go ahead and open it up for those edits?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So if the map could be brought up for a minute, at least what I'm reviewing from the website. Okay, on that map, at least what I can read, it's hard to read right now on the screen, but it says Fairfax County and City of Fairfax, and it should include City of Falls Church, because two of the specific elements, 105 and 106, are both the City of Falls Church and Fairfax County. That is called out later on under multi-jurisdictional RACS. But that should also be included in Fairfax County and City of Fairfax, and City of Falls Church should be the subtitle there. In addition, and this is a question for my own planning department, I don't know whether they were in a state of flux, but the entire City of Falls Church, I think, meets the criteria, and yet we're not listed there. So right now, we're sort of divided between two, along with Fairfax County, which I'm honored by, although Fairfax County may not be. But I am honored by that, but at least as placeholders for right now. But it seems to me, when you look at prior maps, it's clearer that the City of Falls Church and Fairfax County shared those two activity centers. So I just wanted to clarify that and correct that particular subtitle. It is important if this is a map that's going out to the public to be absolutely accurate. Thank you.
Okay, and just so we're clear here, did you want to make a substitute to add, or do you want to add Falls Church to the map in the way you've just described?
Well, I would like to. That's a question for the planning directors if that issue was ever discussed. And I don't know whether it was a ball dropped by our planning department or what, but I think we would meet that criteria.
Okay.
But that may be something for further discussion. What we can do for the map right now is just be clearer that the subtitle ought to be Fairfax County and the City of Fairfax and the City of Falls Church, as two of the planning regions underneath that are multi-jurisdictional, which you do point out at another point.
Okay, Mr. Goodwin, did you want to respond to the point that?
Yes, I can certainly respond to that. I think one thing about this map that is maybe different from the previous version in 2012, 2013, is we did want to highlight this attribute of activity centers that are very multi-jurisdictional in nature. And just an example of that, and I won't certainly will follow up with Falls Church staff. An example of that would be in the District of Columbia and Friendship Heights. Obviously, that is a jurisdictional activity center that is both shared by Montgomery County and by the District of Columbia. So it was very similar to some of these other activity centers that have been identified, are activity centers that are in its inherent nature are basically part of two different jurisdictions, and we wanted to kind of highlight that. But obviously, we can certainly go back and take a look at the Falls Church and see whether or not we need to make a correction with either the naming convention or to make sure it's consistent.
Thank you. And will that be before these maps are made public or before they're published as official maps?
I think so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to raise those details, but
No.
give me a good time.
It's important, so not to feel bad about that. So thank you for raising it, and thank you, Mr. Goodwin, for following up on that and letting us know. Second, I think Ms. Fitzwater had her hand up, so.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification and then a question. For Frederick County, the map looks correct, but the table that lists the regional activity centers, and it, I guess, could be seen as nitpicky, but there are a couple of corrections. Under the City of Frederick, that's on the first page of the table, you have downtown Frederick and northeast Frederick, which are indeed in the City of Frederick, but then you have Brunswick, which is in Frederick County, but is not a part of the City of Frederick. So that one really should be in the Frederick County section. And then on the third page of the table where Frederick County is, you have the Ballinger Creek, South Frederick, and Urbana, which are in Frederick County. But the Golden Mile is very much a center of the City of Frederick. And so we should probably flip-flop those, that Brunswick needs to be with Frederick County and the Golden Mile needs to be in the City of Frederick.
A very good catch, and something that I should point out to you is that the numbering convention that you see here in the memo is different than the numeric number that is found on the activity center map. So for the memo, the activity centers were listed in alphabetical order by jurisdiction. And then for the map itself, it's based on a numerical order based on the transportation analysis zone, starting with the district first. So, but we will make sure that the naming and the numbering and everything is assigned to the right jurisdiction.
Thank you. The numbers weren't concerning to me. It was more just making sure that the center is attached to the correct jurisdiction. So thank you for that correction. And then my other question is, I was wondering if you all could give some additional examples of either times in the past that the regional activity centers have been utilized to further some of COG's missions. So you gave the example of the housing grants that are going on right now and using these as an example of that. And I think the resolution named one of the technical assistant grants that you guys have also given. But could you talk a little bit more about either in the past or ideas in the future? I think the chair already brought up a good point about the economic development work, but how you envision this mapping tool and these identifying these regional activity centers as playing into some of COG's work moving forward. Just have a better understanding of how this tool can or should be utilized further?
Well, as mentioned earlier, I think it's important to note that our housing targets, we did have a target of concentrating future housing within our activity centers. In addition to that, our Region Forward had a goal of increasing the amount of jobs and employment into activity centers. So yes, there is a number of programs in the past, not only the TLC, which is a transportation land use program, which is a grant opportunity for local governments to take advantage of. Obviously, activity centers was a selection criteria for that, but it's been included in some other funding opportunities. HAP, which is our Housing Assistance Planning Program, and also the upcoming ULI Washington COG TAP program also uses activity centers as a selection criteria for funding those such projects. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that we can certainly use this map for. I think Mr. Lusk has brought up an excellent example from an economic development lens that we are hoping to explore that as well. But also, I should also say that our local governments also use this geography as well from their work as well. And obviously, 25 years ago, this idea of activity centers was more of a COG terminology or a COG idea. But I think that in the past, I think we have seen a number of our jurisdictions have adopted a similar topology of identifying places within their jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add that really as this original request was from the Transportation Planning Board, so we can link land use and transportation planning together better, and connecting regional activity centers can become a priority. So that's the best value that we get from it is in our transportation planning.
Yes, Mr. Karatonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very related, or at least not unrelated to what we just discussed. So Arlington has a fair density of activity centers. I believe, related to our size, we have the most. So I was going through the attributes, the 2 compulsory ones and the 4 that the activity centers have to at least meet 2. Do we have any idea, that's number 1, whether in this map, how many are compliant with maybe all of the 6 or less than the 6, so that I could imagine, begin to map out where the weaknesses is, or who is going ahead, who is lagging behind? And related to that, do you have any thoughts, since the concept now it has matured, it started at transportation-oriented development, it is matured, whether we should think about evolving our criteria to reflect dynamic differences? The reason why I'm asking is because we all want to learn from success, and we want to see what policies are working best, and be as compliant as as harmonious as possible in applying these.
Thank you. I'm Kanti Shrikant, COG's Deputy Executive Director. I also direct the Transportation Planning Board. So, Mr. Karantonis, to your first question, the secondary criteria was designed to acknowledge that not all activity centers in the region would be similar, to recognize the diversity of the jurisdictions within our region. So we were not looking for any centers that would hit all 6. Building on that, leading to your second question, we did a report, it's coming to be about 7-8 years now, called Place Plus Opportunities, where we looked at the 141 activity centers, and we recognized that those could be characterized or grouped into 6 different typologies. Within those, you have at one end of the spectrum, like a Roslyn, which would be a very dense, high activity center, and then you would have other activity centers that are in the suburban, exurban areas. They are still activity centers. They have a different characteristics. So that is what those four were designed to develop. Earlier, there was a question from Ms. Fitzwater. How else can this regional activity centers as a concept and as geographic locations be used? I can tell you one of the ways in which the Transportation Planning Board has been using it since 1999 when it came up with this idea. Transportation Planning Board acknowledges that land use is a transportation strategy. If we want to address the congestion, if we want to improve mobility and accessibility, we have to think about land use. So that was the idea behind regional activity centers. One of the things that the Transportation Planning Board looks at regional activity centers is 3 C's. One is concentrate, which is what density and mixed use goes to. The other 2 C's are connection and circulation. Connection meaning regional activity centers is to be connected through high capacity transit service. There are roadway connections, but we acknowledge that providing mass transit service is a better way, more cost-effective way of providing mobility and accessibility. So that is the second D. The third D is circulation. It is very critical that within these regional activity centers, within those half-mile circles, we have safe, convenient, walking and biking facilities built in so that active modes of transportation, or as it is called, the non-motorized modes of transportation, are made available. So the TPB, when it evaluates and updates its long-range plan, it reports on how are those 2 criteria being met in the projects that are being proposed in the long-range plan. So that's another area where the TPB calls on its members to prioritize transportation projects that would help and support the regional activity centers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Thank you very
Karatonis? You're okay? Ms. Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kante, thank you for that explanation. I think what I learned when the presentation was presented to me in Prince William County was just that, circulation and connection, and it means a lot. And so I want to thank the dais for giving us an opportunity to make the revisions that we made for Prince William County, because there was a small one, but a very integral one that needed to be made as it relates to that. And so I certainly appreciate that. And I want to also just take this opportunity in the absence of our wonderful planning director, Tanya Washington, who's a part of this team. Thank you, Dave, for representing Madam Chair and I today to this august team as well. So we thank you for the hard work that you've done, because this is a step in the right direction as we go forward, and certainly in support of it.
Okay, Mayor Jordan.
Hey, well, thank you very much. I just want to thank the COG staff and the Regional Planning Advisory Technical Committee for their hard work, this foundational work in pulling together land use and transportation data to help us as we move forward in our regional collaboration. And in particular, I just wanted to kind of point out the importance of working together, large jurisdictions and smaller jurisdictions. We have planning staffs and actually working in lockstep as we begin to address things like a regional economic development plan. So to the TPB and to the Region Forward Coalition for all of their work on this, great appreciation.
Any other questions? So before we go back to the vote, just to clarify from the conversation we have with Mr. Karatonis, Ms. Fitzwater, and then Mr. Godwin, being able to look at the issues with Falls Church, and then thinking about what we heard from the city of Frederick and the county of Frederick, taking into consideration those points, we can now move this item unless there's any other points or concerns. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and try this one more time? All those that are in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sorry, any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We'll move to our next item, which is agenda item number 9, homelessness in the metropolitan Washington area. And for this item, we will hear the results and analysis of our annual point-in-time count of persons experiencing homelessness in the metropolitan Washington area and discuss the overall current state of homelessness in this region. Today, we are here. We have here with us the chair of our COG Homelessness Services Committee, Stephen Kane, and the City of Alexandria. We have Montgomery County's Homeless Chief, Christine Hong, and from DC, the Community Partnership's Deputy Chief of Policy and Programs, Elizabeth Young. We're also joined by COG staff leading this work, Hillary Chapman and Sam Kinney. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Chapman to get us started.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lusk and Vice Chairs Allen and Collins. My name is Stephen Kane. I am the Continuum of Care Lead Administrator for the City of Alexandria and the Chair of the Homeless Services Committee. So I am thankful for the opportunity today to present to you guys the 25th annual results of the point-in-time count. If you hadn't heard, this year's count was a little bit different than previous years. We did it on 2 days instead of 1 here in the DC Metro. So on the 22nd for our Northern Virginia communities, and then on the 29th for DC and Maryland communities. That second date was chosen to not coincide with the inauguration and some security concerns that were here in the district. So Arlington County, Alexandria, Fairfax, Prince William, and Loudoun all did that January 22nd date. And then again, the 29th was chosen by DC, Montgomery County, and PG County to avoid overlap with the inauguration. Before I get into the data, I do want to acknowledge and kind of give a shout out to the service providers and our partners who really make the count possible. Those are outreach workers, shelter providers, DV safe houses who do this count, but really do this work every day and further the mission of the Homeless Services Committee, and that is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring here in the district. The 2025 enumeration and all point-in-time counts are an annual snapshot of persons experiencing unsheltered or literal homelessness in the region. So that includes single adults, families with children, unaccompanied youth, and all folks living in shelter, transitional housing, on the streets, parks, campsites. We also do include counts and information on formerly homeless persons, so those that are moved out of shelter and now residing in permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, or other forms of kind of long-term subsidized housing. As I get into this data, I want to note during typical winter conditions, jurisdictions will expand shelter. So they're adding shelter beds, usually in the form of seasonal shelter. You may hear it called hypothermia shelter. Those are kind of really designed to get people inside and prevent the loss of life. What it does for the point in time count, though, is allows us to collect some of that data electronically. So a lot of this data is coming in through what is known as the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. And this year on the count, 86% of folks' data was collected that way. So 86 persons on the count were sheltered in a sheltered location in some kind of bed other than on the street. Okay. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So our first slide, how many people are experiencing homelessness in the region? This is a comparison of all of our jurisdictions in COG from 2021 to this past year. This year's count, we found 9,659 people experiencing homelessness across the region. This is a slight increase, 115 people, or just 1% compared to last year's count. So after kind of 2 consecutive years, if you're tracking those numbers there, of increases following the historic low we had in 2022, we did see a slight decline this year. Across jurisdictions, there is some variance. I think half of the jurisdictions increased and half decreased compared to last year when 7 out of 8 all recorded increases. Although we had a slight decrease compared to last year, we have increased as a region 19% since 2021, with 1,575 more people counted over the past 5 years. That's a jurisdiction-wide trend. Every jurisdiction has experienced an increase during that time period. So while locally we're a little bit of variance, this year's results suggest we may be stabilizing, at least as a region. For the first time since the pandemic, the region count has leveled off a bit and remains still slightly lower than our pre-pandemic, pre-COVID levels. This next slide divides between families and single adults, so kind of a household composition breakdown. Single adults are going to be those households without children, families, adults, and households with children, and then finally, only minor children. That's going to be your kind of unaccompanied youth. Since 2021, the region has had a 7% increase in single adults and a 52% increase in the number of persons in families. Children represented 60% of all persons who were in homeless families in the 2025 count. Causation out of this kind of singular data set is very tough, but clearly rising housing costs, inflation, stagnant wages make it pretty tough for families to stay housed in our region. 80% of households with extremely low income, so at or below that 30% AMI level, are extremely or severely, cost burdened in the DC Metro. So they face difficulty with basic needs, prioritizing, budgeting for housing placement. And so out of the many factors, we certainly know that cost of living in the region is playing a role in that family homelessness. Looking at unaccompanied minors, I want to note kind of the competing definitions. And if you certainly will see other numbers produced by school systems around the area. They're tracking the number of kids in class that are experiencing homelessness. Comparing that to the one-day snapshot, the school system is a kind of self-reported data point that's collected throughout the school year. And it's going by the U.S. Department of Education's definition. So that will include all the kids that are in shelter, like we're counting, but it'll also include kids that are in doubled up situations. So that number is usually a little larger than what homeless assistance systems are reporting. Many jurisdictions in the region beyond that do try to do kind of youth counts separately from the point in time count to kind of get a better handle on what unaccompanied youth homelessness looks like in their separate jurisdictions. Next slide is representing single adults in the DC Metro who meet HUD's definition of chronic homelessness and who met it on the night of the count. So chronic homelessness is a person who has a documented disability and has been experiencing homelessness of a long-term duration. So that duration would be a year straight or 4 episodes in the last 3 years, and those episodes total a 12-month duration. This year, we had a slight increase in chronicity, rising by 37 individuals compared to 2024. Looking at it that at a regional level, 4 of the 8 jurisdictions saw increases in the count of chronic homeless persons. 8 COCs recorded a 9% decrease between 21 and 2025. So we're still kind of below those pre-COVID levels, as you can see on the bars there. The strategies around chronic homelessness, housing first, and the by names list coordination, really trying to case staff hard to serve cases. Those have been the most effective at reducing chronic homelessness regionally and nationwide. Access to permanent and those deep housing subsidies is really what makes a difference in ensuring that we're able to make sustained progress for this population specifically. Next, we have some demographic data. So we've been tracking demographic data on persons experiencing homelessness, I think, since the start of the count, and really just try to address what gaps there may be in our systems or, in our regional response. So you can see on this slide, single adults and families are most likely to report their racial identity as Black or African American. 67% of adults responded that they identify as Black or African American, compared to the regional residential population, where only 26% of DC residents identify as Black or African American. 14% on the count of respondents identify as white, and 8% identify as Hispanic or Latinx. I want to note that kind of the root cause and the origin of this disproportionality based on race is really a legacy of institutional and systemic racism, and that is impacting communities to this day. So housing policies like redlining and exclusionary zoning and other racially restrictive covenants, along with just inequities that we know to exist in employment and policing, access to credit, and beyond, have led to long-term divestment in communities of color. And of course, that has increased the risk of housing instability. These numbers, I think that you're seeing are singles, but they are the same when you look at the family side. So when you look at households with children, that disproportionality still holds. Next, we have veterans. So in 2025, the number of persons experiencing homelessness that served in the armed forces decreased by 10 people or 3%. 10 people, pretty small decrease, a loss across a large region, but it does reflect at the very least a break from, you guys can see, consecutive years of increases that we had. Compared to 5 years ago in 2021, the region has seen an increase in vets by 7%. 5 of our 8 COCs increased in 2025 compared to 2021. The overall reduction in veteran homelessness is attributed to targeted funding from the federal government, really focused on assisting this population. So programs like VASH and SSVF vouchers have really boosted communities' ability to get veterans into housing and out of shelter. Next, we have a slide on seniors. So starting back in 2018, COG regional COCs started looking specifically at aging adults experiencing homelessness. So this is exactly that. You see the age categories and the years going by. This was really to look into because aging adults who are experiencing homelessness, they have medical ages that exceed their biological ages. So age-related medical conditions like decreased mobility or cognitive function, they can be on par with counterparts who may be 20 years older. Another stat for you, the average life expectancy for a person experiencing homelessness at age 42 to 50 is age 42 to 52 years compared to 78 in the general population. So you can really see the importance of getting these folks into housing. In 2025, we did count one adult who was over 90 years old. They were in an emergency shelter. Thankfully, they weren't unsheltered, but pretty old. And as you can see, the data shows a kind of a clustering of folks around the 55 and older range, that far right grouping of graphs. And that just really underscores the need to address this population. We have a kind of a growing population that is highly vulnerable. So this is something that our COCs have been recently looking into and trying to find solutions. And something that you guys likely know, but our shelters in the DC metro region are really not equipped to serve older adults and some of the medical conditions that they have, cancer to limited cognitive functioning. As kind of one of the biggest generations in our country's history, baby boomers age, and the cost of living increases. I think we can anticipate that this problem is a little bit going to grow without proper resources. Next, we'll get into a little bit of positivity. These are formerly homeless folks. So the goal, of course, of all of our systems is permanent housing. We're trying to get people out of homelessness into a permanent, stable situation. So this slide is, as I said, a little bit of good news. This represents the good work that we're doing across the district, across the metro region, and progress that we've continued to make placing people into housing. So you can see the increase in the overall number of formerly homeless individuals placed in permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing or otherwise. In 2025, we saw a 37% increase in housing placements compared to 5 years ago in 2020. The significant number of people that are placed in this permanent housing has helped kind of tamp down the growing number or the growth of homelessness or housing instability in the region, especially as some of those pandemic era programs have sunset. We continue to try to use this strategy to really reinforce the need for affordable housing. And it's really crucial to preventing homelessness or other, or getting folks into permanent housing as quickly as possible, and really making sure folks don't lose housing. Local government staff, COC partners have been housing folks at a good rate, a pretty impressive rate, I think, considering all the challenges and all the lack of resources out there. But we still need kind of more resources and more juice to keep the work going. So we definitely want to celebrate all the hard work regionally that we've done, not just on that one day in January, but it does go on throughout the year. And we like this slide to kind of close us off to show we are continuing to make progress, continue to drive those numbers down and making homelessness, as I mentioned, rare, brief, and non-recurring.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And good afternoon, Chair Lusk and Vice Chairs Allen and Collins. It's really a pleasure to be here today. So my name is Sam Kenny. I'm the Regional Homeless Systems Coordinator here at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. And as Stefan did a great job laying out, the point in time count has a lot of incredible, valuable information for the region. However, it is just that. It is only a point in time, a snapshot. And as he alluded to at the end there, it is not granular enough to provide us the information we need on a regional level to fully understand the needs of the homeless services system. We know that people experience homelessness every night of the year, and we want our data and regional understanding to reflect that as well. And so that is why I want to take a few minutes here to talk about what is beyond the point in time count, and in particular, talk about the Built for Zero initiative. So Built for Zero is really a methodology and a framework that supports coordinated and data-driven decision-making at its most practical level. And this is something that all of the jurisdictions already do at their local levels, and many of them do a fantastic job. What we're talking about here is what does that understanding and context look like at a regional level. And last year, the board heard about the Built for Zero initiative, and I think my position as the regional homeless systems coordinator is a testament to that conversation and some of the first steps of that work. Because hopefully my role as a coordinator across the entire system will serve as a proof of concept for what initiatives can do more broadly. So one of the key parts of my role will be to support the communities in their specific Built for Zero implementations. And one of the great things about the region is that we have some jurisdictions who are already experts in the methodology. So in particular, the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, Arlington County have been a part of this methodology and practice for years now, and they are bringing a lot of peer sharing and expertise with them to the table. What has changed over the last year is that we are also now bringing along 4 other jurisdictions into a regional effort that brings some standardization across the jurisdictions. And so in particular, the city of Alexandria, Prince William County, Prince George's County, and Loudoun County are now on board with the Built for Zero initiative. So on this next slide, I want to talk a little bit more granular about what we're doing right now, what the next couple of months look like, and hopefully where we're going over the next couple of years. So in particular, we are laser focused on those new to Built for Zero jurisdictions. And we really have 2 specific goals over the next couple months. And the first goal is that these new jurisdictions will be working to create quality by name data. This gets a little bit in the weeds, but at its core, what it is that Built for Zero has outlined 29 different metrics across the homeless management information system, as well as the coordinated entry system, where if each jurisdiction meets those metrics, we're sort of all moving in the right direction. We're able to look across jurisdictions in a way that would have been difficult before. So over the next couple of months, we're renewing an assessment of those 29 metrics and trying to figure out what next steps are and immediate improvements that can be made. The second goal then is that new jurisdictions will upload aggregate data to a regional community solutions regional tracker. So this will not be data that is as detailed as the point in time count data, and it will not include any personally identifiable information, but it will have very important metrics for understanding regional homelessness. And in particular, it will talk about the inflow into the homeless services system, those who are actively homeless within it, and the outflow as well. And so those 2 goals over the next couple months, we hope to, in September and October, have shown some demonstrated progress there. So we can say that many of these communities have improved upon their quality by name data assessment, as well as uploading data. And I think with a little hope and a little pushing, next year during our 2026 point in time report out to the board, we should hopefully be able to have the context of the point in time count and its robustness, but also the additional enhanced data from the Built for Zero implementation as well. So I'm extremely excited to be working with all the communities and working across the jurisdictions to understand how we can better tackle the issue of homelessness. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Elizabeth Young, Deputy Chief at the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness.
Thanks so much, Sam. Good afternoon, Chair Lusk and Vice Chairs Allen and Collins. As Sam mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Young, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Policy and Programs at the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness in the District of Columbia. Our organization serves on behalf of the district as the lead agency in the HUD-funded Continuum of Care. So Sam just talked about the exciting work underway with the Built for Zero initiative. And while that offers a strong framework to align our individual practices and improve data within each of our individual jurisdictions, it's just a starting place to achieve real systems change at the regional level. To achieve a regional approach to addressing homelessness, we need the ability to share data across jurisdictions and in real time, not just one-off initiatives like the point-in-time count or something like this, where we can coordinate our data a little bit, but rather a shared regional data warehouse to support faster and more coordinated responses to people experiencing homelessness. With a more integrated system, we can ensure that people are connected to the right services more quickly, that resources are deployed more equitably, and that regional strategies are grounded in timely, person-centered information. That's why our committee is focused on the next phase of our efforts, which is aimed at strengthening cross-jurisdictional data sharing. This effort builds on meaningful work that's already underway. The first example I'd like to share is a collaboration between the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. Under a data sharing agreement dating back to 2017, our collaborative has been engaged in active by name data sharing efforts that has allowed us to case conference veterans experiencing homelessness and coordinate services more effectively across our local systems. I'm really excited to tell you that recently we've taken that to the next level, and thanks to an initial grant support from Kaiser Permanente, our collaborative has just this past year built a data warehouse using OpenPath software, which allows us to integrate our individual homeless management information systems, so those databases that Stefan mentioned earlier. So we all have access to near real-time information across our 3 jurisdictions. The second example of data sharing I want to tell you about is happening in Northern Virginia, where many of the continuums of care there are working through the statewide homelessness data integration project. It's also a data warehouse project using the OpenPath platform to align their efforts and join a more coordinated real-time approach at the state level. So the opportunity before us now in our committee is to bridge the gap between those 2 initiatives and create a region-wide system of data coordination. Over the next year, we look forward to working together to begin this conversation in earnest, identifying shared priorities and laying the foundation for scalable regional solutions. As part of this, we want to be able to expand the use of a shared software platform like the OpenPath software that I mentioned earlier, and to advance secure, privacy-centered data integration, ensuring that we maintain strong safeguards, for client confidentiality and public trust. And then looking even further ahead, our goal is to strengthen a long-term data sharing infrastructure so we might be able to connect homelessness data with health, behavioral health, or other social services systems. And these cross-sector linkages are critical to addressing the underlying drivers of homelessness and ensuring that our most vulnerable residents receive comprehensive support. Now, one of the big hurdles to achieving something like a regional data warehouse is developing a data sharing agreement that encompasses all of the continuums of care, not just the 3 that I mentioned before. So I hope that we have all of your support as we work towards that effort. This is not just about technology or compliance. It is about building the infrastructure and trust needed to move from fragmented responses to a truly coordinated system, one that reflects our shared regional commitment to making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Thanks. So in addition to the exciting data sharing work underway, I want to take a moment to highlight how our regional vision is in line with local action in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia Continuum of Care includes more than 200 provider agencies, and this year's count reflects the impact of our collective efforts to scale housing prevention and workforce solutions that are grounded in community needs. The first project I want to highlight is a cross-agency initiative between the district's Department of Human Services and the District of Columbia Housing Authority. Last summer, these 2 agencies worked together to assist over 1,000 eligible families exit locally funded rapid rehousing programs and transition to federal Housing Choice Voucher program. This collaboration led to the establishment of dedicated teams within DHS and DCHA to support end-to-end application processing. And as of March 2025, this joint effort has resulted in 1,014 voucher approvals, significantly advancing long-term housing stability for these families. A second initiative is building a streamlined intake system for single individuals experiencing homelessness. Over the past year, the district's DHS has expanded the reach of its Project Reconnect, which has placed homelessness diversion staff in shelters, day centers, and with outreach teams to engage with people newly experiencing homelessness or facing housing insecurity to get rapidly linked to appropriate interventions. The district also launched the Front Door Navigation Tool with our Homeless Services Hotline. This assessment tool has strengthened opportunities for diversion, assisted in providing consistent information about system operations and available resources to individuals calling the hotline, and connected people to the right resource faster. And finally, the district is also building a peer leadership pipeline by centering lived experience in its workforce. The Peer Case Management Institute, developed in partnership with Howard University, equipped 35 people with lived experience of homelessness with the training and support needed to become successful case managers within the homeless services system. So last summer, the Peer Case Management Institute cohort graduated with about 2/3 of those graduates gainfully employed now, many within the continuum of care. So this is just strengthening our, culturally responsive, trust-based service delivery and shifting the narrative on who leads this work. Together, these strategies show how the District of Columbia is advancing a system-wide shift focused on equity, prevention, and permanent housing. Whether it's voucher coordination, real-time diversion, or peer-driven leadership, the district's local innovation is aligned with regional goals to reduce homelessness and invest in long-term stability for our residents. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lusk and Vice Chairs Allen and Collins. My name is Christine Hong. I'm the Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness with the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. It's my honor to be here with all of you and my colleagues here. As we continue to discuss regional collaboration, I want to spotlight how that's showing up in Montgomery County, where strong local action is leading to real progress in prevention, housing, and system planning. Montgomery County expanded its centralized intake system to include single adults, helping to divert over 2,000 households from entering the homelessness system. With flexible supports like transportation assistance and short-term stays with family or friends, more people were able to avoid shelter entirely. And data shows that when households are able to avoid an experience of homelessness, they're more likely to recover quickly and avoid a long-term experience of homelessness. So we definitely invest strongly into the diversion effort. The county is also moving forward with a new strategic planning process in 2025, building on our 6 core strategies. And you can see in the picture above, that was our community-wide meeting last week where we brought our community together to give us input on our next strategy to end and prevent homelessness. One of the 6 core strategies I alluded to includes a commitment to regional coordination. The planning process includes input from people with lived experience and reflects a broad cross-section of the community, including not just people with lived experience, our People's Committee as well, which is one of the committees of our Interagency Commission on Homelessness, as well as our many service providers who are the core and do that work of preventing and ending homelessness every single day, as well as our elected officials. Locally funded housing programs like the Short-Term Housing and Resolution Program are a core of what we do in Montgomery County, and they help us to be independent of less reliant on federal funding. Our SHARP program, our so-called SHARP program, has helped more than 110 families move into permanent housing just this year. So over 3 months, we housed those families. And that is because we saw a rapid spike in families experiencing homelessness, which is reflected in the point-in-time count on January 29th. So we moved quickly with locally funding, and we helped those families move directly into permanent housing. The program provides upfront resources like deposits and a 12-month rental subsidy paired with navigation services, which is light touch case management. Another example of locally funded programming is our county's rental assistance program, which is a shallow subsidy for households where at least one member has a disability or is 55 years or older. And in 2024, the rental assistance program served 825 adult-only households and 143 families with minor children. And this program is a preventive measure. It helps to provide a little bit more in rental assistance, up to $503, to prevent those households, especially those on fixed income, from entering the homeless system. Lastly, Montgomery County's largest permanent supportive housing program, which is the Housing Initiative Program, is primarily locally funded as well. It serves more than 500 households in the county. It allows the county to be more flexible in who we choose to serve and less reliant on our federal requirements and our federal funding. In addition, we have been able to leverage funding for supportive services through a state Medicaid waiver program, which I'm really excited to share Governor Moore plans to expand. So we will be able to expand the number of people served through our locally funded permanent supportive housing program. These actions in Montgomery County are part of a larger regional shift toward coordinated, data-informed solutions that prioritize prevention and housing. Housing, again, the solution to ending homelessness, and as well cross-jurisdictional alignment. By working together across the region while tailoring our approaches locally, we are building a more responsive and unified system to reduce homelessness. I'll go to the next slide. So next, we're going to talk about the unique challenges ahead of us and the key takeaways here. As we look ahead as a region, it's clear that while the region is making important strides, there are significant external challenges that could undermine our progress, particularly at the federal level. Federal funding threats could disrupt regional progress. The administration's recently released top-line budget proposal includes a plan to substantially change and reduce the Continuum of Care program, the primary funding source for local homelessness systems, and to cut rental assistance and public housing programs by over 40%. In Montgomery County, our public housing authority houses 29,000 households. It's a huge number of people. These cuts would severely destabilize, it's a huge number of people. That's exactly why we're talking about this point, because we need to prepare. These cuts would severely destabilize local efforts, force the termination of long-term housing supports, and risk pushing people back into homelessness or disrupt our diversion programs. Additionally, we know that encampment enforcement actions ripple across the region, often displacing individuals into neighboring jurisdiction and disrupting service connections. A recent executive order has directed increased removals of encampments on federal land in Washington, D.C., right here, which could further shift responsibility across local systems. This highlights the urgent need for coordinated approaches and real-time data sharing, such as what Elizabeth shared, so that jurisdictions can identify who is best positioned to respond and ensure that people are quickly connected to the housing and services they need. Furthermore, any cuts to essential services could compound housing instability. Proposed cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and mental and behavioral health services would leave many low-income residents without the supports they rely on to stay stably housed. For people already on the brink, losing access to food or health care can be the tipping point that leads to eviction or homelessness. Of course, housing is one of the major social determinants of health, and which is why it is such an important part of our strategy to end homelessness and to help households thrive. Despite these challenges, our region is well positioned to respond. Through the Built for Zero and other shared strategies, jurisdictions across the metropolitan Washington area are aligning goals and practices to strengthen coordination and improve service delivery. This work is already underway. Efforts that you have heard about today are helping us move beyond siloed responses toward a more integrated and accountable regional system. Long-term success will require sustained investment in the solutions we know work. Expanding deeply affordable housing paired with supportive services remains central to reducing and ultimately ending homelessness. Across the region, local efforts are already demonstrating that this approach can drive results, from housing placements for long-term shelter stayers to flexible diversion tools that prevent new entries. To build on this momentum, we must continue to scale these strategies, support implementation across all jurisdictions, and work together to ensure that every person has a pathway to stable housing. Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity to present on this year's point in time count and residents in the region experiencing homelessness, as well as our broader efforts to improve homeless service delivery. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Yeah, let me start by saying I really appreciate this presentation and the completeness and the thoroughness of each of your comments. Very, very helpful. I wanted to maybe go back. Stefan, you said something that kind of resonated with me, and it was connected to the point in time survey. So I participated with my chief of staff in this year's point in time survey. So we were out with facets and had the opportunity to go to the detention center in Fairfax, and then also a couple of other areas in the county. And I'll say this, the most gut-wrenching of the individuals that we encountered was a 80-year-old woman who was in her car in a parking garage. And at the time, it was probably about 9 degrees outside. And she didn't have the car on when we approached it. So I guess she had it on earlier, but had turned it off. The point that she showed on this slide, thank you, this 55 and up slide, this is a problem. I mean, I think, the point that you made too was that you encountered someone who was over 90 years old in this year's point in time survey as well. And that's not acceptable. We can't have people who are the oldest members of our community not having some stable place to live. How are we going to address this? I guess I know this is a trickier question for me to be asking you, but just thinking through the options for us to better support those who are in this kind of position. What are your thoughts? What are your suggestions here?
Well, certainly some of the data sharing practices and processes we're trying to focus on are going to help understanding more about this population. What are their avenues to exit homelessness? What is bringing them in? A lot of it is around at least locally in Alexandria, from our kind of deep dive into these, is a lot of it is around employment. A lot of these seniors are on fixed income, right. SSI, SSDI, not quite enough to sustain a household, especially in this high cost region. So it's certainly looking, partnering with our workforce development centers, looking at what employment opportunities there may be for elderly or aging adults in our area. Of course, we've been up here and hammering the affordable housing piece and more subsidized housing. We need opportunities for our seniors. We need units that will accept vouchers and be ADL compliant. And then I think the healthcare component is a huge piece. So I mentioned, shelters are certainly not equipped to deal with some of these chronic health conditions. Patients with terminal conditions in shelters, it's not the place you want to be. So how can we partner with our, certainly with mainstream health providers? Can we find ways that you talked a little bit about Medicare and Medicaid expansion, find ways to apply that better in our programs, but also unique strategies. We have neighborhood health in Alexandria, so community healthcare providers that are stepping up for our underinsured and uninsured. How can we incorporate those into our shelters if it's a kind of stand-up clinic or drop-by nurses, different things like that, so we can attack it from a few angles. But I definitely think the housing piece and the medical piece for this population need to be kind of addressed in a bit of a two-prong approach. I'll pass to my peers here. Anything else you guys want to?
Yeah, I'll just add that being in this work for about 20 years, what I've observed is that if our systems don't step up to adequately meet the needs of the vulnerable and marginalized, what we see here are the disparities with age, and we see it with race as well as disabilities. As well as with our LGBTQ population. And so in Montgomery County, we know that we have to tailor our interventions to respond to the increasing number of older adults we're seeing. One of the programs I mentioned, the rental assistance program, which is locally funded and therefore has flexibility, is specifically for older adults, and it helps them, because many of them are on fixed incomes, to remain stable in their housing. We also have other permanent supportive housing programs targeted for older adults with additional supportive services for them. And we know that these interventions help to support those individuals and help them to stay in their housing. So I think that's really the approach that we need to take as we see populations that are struggling. We need to invest in those types of targeted interventions.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to take questions from my colleagues. I'm going to start with Vice Chair Collins, and I'll move to my right.
I just want to say to the panel how timely this presentation was. The reason why I'm saying this is this morning I went to my law office and there was a woman, the demographics between 40 to 50 years old. She was set, she had a chair, she had all her belongings in the middle of the parking lot. And so my first thought is, okay, what did I do wrong? You know, I'm thinking all kinds of things. As soon as I open the door, she immediately says, "Mr. Collins, how are you?" She knew exactly who I was. She started going over her many concerns with the lack of housing in Charles County. I asked her about the shelters. She knew about all the shelters in our community. This is very timely because the essence of what I'm trying to say is this is still an issue where we're looking at the division between the discussion of affordable housing and homelessness. Ms. Hong, you used the term deeply affordable housing. It's acceptable when we talk about workforce housing, but at the end of the day, perhaps it's anecdotal. I know in Charles County, our numbers, because I talked to Ms. Chapman about this, our numbers are associated with the Baltimore region. And so the numbers, I'm not seeing that with COG, but I'm seeing an increase in homelessness in our community. And so the question I did have was for Mr. Kenny, when you use the term new jurisdictions, could you define what the new jurisdictions were?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, and Arlington County have been participating in the Built for Zero methodology since between 2015 and 2018. The new jurisdictions, as I perhaps incorrectly said, but jurisdictions who are newly participating in Built for Zero, those are Prince William County, the City of Alexandria, Prince George's County, and Loudoun County. And so in the work that we are doing as a region right now, we have some folks who have very established processes and protocols around leveraging the Built for Zero methodology, and others who are standing them up right now. And we are looking to move the entire region and all 8 jurisdictions forward. But that is the distinction between sort of the new versus those who have been working with it for a while. There's nothing besides that terminology.
So is there, definitely Ms. Chapman, is there an opportunity for Charles County to participate in that?
So Vice Chair Collins, I wanted to note that because Charles County participates with Balance Estate, it is actually just beginning to participate in Build for Zero through the state of Maryland. So the good news is that Community Solutions has just launched a statewide initiative in Maryland that will include Charles County. So we are working also with our peers in Maryland DHCD to coordinate, and so that our regional efforts will build on the work at the state level efforts. So the good news is that Charles County can participate.
Let me recognize Ms. Ashton. Mayor Ashton?
Thank you. Just want to thank you for your professionalism, but also your compassion for what you do every day to help people who are so vulnerable. I can't even ask all the questions that came up because it's a page full. But I was struck by the rise in homelessness and the unhoused population in Montgomery County. It breaks my heart. And one of the reasons you listed was domestic violence as a factor. I know that was something that also occurred during COVID where we saw increases in domestic violence. So I'm just kind of trying to better understand the why. Why so much higher than the other jurisdictions? The other question I wanted to ask is, and I know there's a lot of disparities we're seeing, which you've noted, but just thinking about some of the funding challenges ahead, are you hearing about potential cuts on vouchers or even access to LIHTC programs, which would help to expand the deeply affordable? That's something I just want to understand. What is the headwind we're going to face? And then also, I know that there's been challenges in funding the rental assistance program. And I've been hearing that when people can't access the rental assistance program and get evicted, that could harm their ability to maintain their vouchers. And I'm wondering if that is the case and if there's something that could be done given the unique situation that we're all in so that those folks who are impacted have a way forward. I'm personally helping someone right now try not to get evicted, and I've taken on that case to just check in with her weekly. But I recognize the rental assistance program, the sources are drying up. And this is a teacher who lives in Montgomery County, who works in Prince George's County. So I wanted to raise some of those questions and see if we can learn more.
Sure. Thank you for those questions and also for your leadership in the city of Rockville. I'm a lifelong Rockville resident, really proud of the support the city has provided to homeless response. So first you asked about families, the increase in families experiencing homelessness in Montgomery County and maybe indirectly. So we saw a doubling of families experiencing homelessness between 2024 and 2025, which is deeply troubling. The majority of individuals in those families are children, our most vulnerable members of our community. And what we have been seeing in our housing stabilization programs is that families are still struggling to recover from the pandemic. They're coming to us even after we distribute over $120 million in emergency rental assistance to more than 16,000 households, still seeing many families coming to us with large arrearages, over $10,000. And that is very problematic because it says to us that our families, many of whom are working, are really struggling to keep up with the rising rents and inflation. And then they have this growing backlog of rent that they struggle to pay off. So our eviction prevention services are doing the very best that they can to help with arrearages. And if that amount isn't enough, if the arrearage exceeds how we can help, then we help with relocation, which is not what we want to see happen, but we definitely don't want to see more families entering homelessness. You also alluded to cuts in federally funded programming. So I talked about our, the budget proposal the Trump administration released. It is very troubling because they are talking about cutting our resources to our public housing authority by 40%. And this impacts those 29,000 people who are households, that are housed through our public housing authority. The only cut that is happening now, and it is a significant cut for us, is the emergency housing vouchers that Montgomery County received during the pandemic. So those they are cut. There is the Public Housing Authority, HOC, still has funding through the end of the calendar year, but for us in Montgomery County, that translates into 113 households that we have to identify housing for by the end of this calendar year. So it just adds a level of need that we need to figure out. So very concerning, and the proposed budget, I just encourage everyone to say to their elected officials and for you all to know that this will drive up homelessness in our communities by huge numbers. and it will destabilize families, and they are already struggling. So we need to say that to our members of Congress so that budget is not passed. And then, and I'm just going to move through because I want to answer your questions. You mentioned the low-income housing tax credit. In the state of Maryland, we are very fortunate. Our state legislature approved a preference with the LIHTC policy for people experiencing homelessness. So new projects that include a percentage of units that will go to households exiting homelessness, they will have a larger tax credit. So that's exactly what we need to see happening. Policy that increases the amount of housing that will go to not only low-income families, but extremely low-income families. We know in Montgomery County that 40% of families who we counted during the point-in-time count had no income, and 60% of individual adults who are often very vulnerable reported no income. So that we really need to invest not just in, deeply affordable housing, but also subsidized housing. We absolutely need that. And then I think do I have time to answer the remaining question, or I feel like I'm taking a lot of time? I'm so sorry.
No, I think we're going to probably have to conclude with this response, but please.
Okay, so I think the last question was about eligibility for our existing rental assistance. And it is true, we do require an eviction filing. And I should say that each year it's about 40,000 households who receive eviction filings in Montgomery County. That is a huge number. And we actually moved the criteria from an eviction judgment to an eviction filing. So we have more time to work with each household to prevent the eviction. So while it's still not where we want it to be ahead of any type of filing. That does mean we're going to be serving a lot more people every step further upstream we take it, but we're moving in the right direction and we have more time to prevent evictions. And so that work is really important, and I'd be happy to talk more about details of eligibility. But thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to apologize to my fellow colleagues here. We've gone a little bit over time. I'm going to have to close based on where we are in terms of 2:10. I might ask if Mr. Mercer would be okay for us to include maybe a small section of our retreat to maybe get into this discussion a little bit more, because it looks like there's still, I assume there's more questions that people would like to ask. So if we could maybe, not a lot of time, but maybe we could allot some time for that discussion. And again, just want to thank all of the presenters that were here today, and the work that you're doing is extraordinarily important. And I want you to know that as electeds, many of us we're on the front lines of this. I'll just make one last point and I'll close. Last night, I had a public hearing on an affordable housing project in Fairfax County, multifamily, 120 units, and we had 174 speakers, most in opposition. It was the most attended in terms of a speaker for one single project in the history of the county. So I just want to give you a sense of what the response is to some of these affordable housing projects as well. But again, thank you all very much for your participation here today. And what I'd like to do is note our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 11th. And with that, I will conclude and adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much. All right, mister. Thank you, as always. I know. Good luck to you, mister. Thinking about you. I really am. I know you're in a tough spot.
I have this shit in my mind.